Fanfic Corner, presented by Jennifer. The Sacrifice for Peace, Part 1. Callum sighed heavily as he held his mother close for the first time in years. His nose worked frantically as it helped him reconnect this scent to so many happy times before. So many lost memories and forgotten memories. He felt the tears roll down his cheek as he buried his face deeper into his mother's shoulder, all while she cooed and stroked the back of his head, planting an occasional kiss as her own tears fell into his hair. At long last, mother and son had been reunited. Rayla smiled happily as she watched from a respectful distance, but paused when Soren came in, followed by Pariah in her draconic form. The red dragoness was snarling at the two humans who were marching in front of her, both with their hands chained and guards keeping weapons trained on them. Out of habit, the elf thumbed the now empty scabbards at her hips. There stood the once high mage and mighty Lord Viren and his daughter Claudia. They were in the very place he intended to destroy, for all his crazed lust for power. By the moon above, how long had she wanted to rip this thing apart, piece by piece, for all the suffering Callum had been forced to endure. As she stared at him, trying to control herself, she felt a familiar hand work into her balled-up fist and laced fingers within hers. She exhaled as she glanced at Callum, watching as he stared down the man who had single-handedly ruined his life, and then saw fit to justify it. Before anyone could speak up about their capture, a shadow from the side of the chambers moved in and took the shape of a tall, dark-clothed being that walked to the center of the throne room. They seemed to be a dragon in their hybrid form, though quite a bit taller, and they were horribly thin. It seemed a small breeze would blow this being over, but there they stood. Ezran slowly made his way over to his brother's left side, while Soren drew his sword at the strange sudden appearance of this dragon. However, as others in the hall tensed at this stranger, Pariah stepped forward, shifting to her own hybrid form and bowing as though she were greeting royalty. The other dragons and variants followed suit, leaving only the human and elf attendants utterly speechless over who this dragon could be. All those present who had dragon blood, apart from Callum and his mother, bowed down to this newcomer. Cal? Ezrin questioned, looking up at his brother, who merely shrugged. Don't look at me. The small group turned as Zuiba calmly walked up to the dragons. Greetings to you, O Keeper. The being bowed before turning to Ezrin and surprising him as he pulled off his hood, revealing a young man's face, but shrouded with snow-white hair. To answer your question, Your Majesty, I am simply called the Keeper. I am what you would say an archivist. I archive and record all the history of the royal family that has happened, and has yet to happen, dating back to the reign of Sol Regum and beyond Queen Zuibas. Ezrin slowly stepped away from Callum and hugged Bate closer. Are you saying you know the future? His innocent question neutrally threw off the deep-thinking people in the crowd as they regarded the stranger with new light. When the Keeper nodded, it was with a smile, a small fond smile. I do indeed, young Ezrin, as well as the tragedy of the past. Zuiva's voice suddenly rose to a tone reserved only for commands. I know the Keeper law. As a reigning monarch of the royal house, as well as a mother, I permit you to share the story you must share, Keeper. The being nodded while Ezrin reached behind Callum and tugged on Rayla's leg. Keeper law? Her own look of confusion matched his, and she yelped when the stranger went from 10 feet to a foot away in an instant. Then, without a word, he lightly tapped Callum's forehead. The teen's eyes rolled back and closed, the Keeper catching him easily as he slumped forward. Strangely, Rayla didn't feel panicked by the sudden change, and was even relieved when she heard a soft snore. The Keeper nodded as he lowered the boy to the floor. He has suffered through the ordeal once. Best he is not made to do so again. Before anyone could ask what he meant, he snapped his fingers nonchalantly, and every single person in the room began to see Callum's life being replayed at speed. From the moment he was taken to the moment of his return, they watched what he had been through. Rayla didn't know when, but as she heard Callum on his first night in that awful place, begging to go home to his mother, she realized she had his head cradled in her lap and was tenderly stroking his hair. Without thinking anything of it, she bent forward and pecked his forehead while she tried to ease away all the heartache she felt in those seconds Callum had endured over all those years. As soon as the images faded, Zuiba looked absolutely thunderous when she turned to the human mages. How dare you? She growled, her words spoken so softly that it sent a chill down the spines of everyone present, even the mighty Sunfire Owls in attendance. Varian didn't even blink at her tone. I did what I had to, so mankind would have a fighting chance against the real threat, you. She stepped forward like a tigress closing in on her prey. By taking my son, killing my mate, denying me of my happiness, of everything? Viren sneered and strained, even as Claudia backed away from the furious Archdragon. He refused to show weakness to this queen. He was just a dragon. Besides, I saw the other egg. How long did you wait before you replaced your precious family? She raised her hand, full of raw electricity, to fly at this foul being when another hand halted hers. She turned to the Keeper and lowered her arm, still glaring at the human. The Keeper stepped forward a little as he looked Viren right in the eye and gave a small nod. You, who have stolen so much from Queen Zuiba, shall also feel her pain. Within 3 days' time, your son will be dead by your words and by the hands of your daughter, and there will be nothing you or any of the royal families, human or dragon, can do to save him." All in attendance gasped at that, but Viren was quick to recover. "Threatening me with empty words of a future that none can see? You really are pathetic if you think that will frighten me." Raylan and Ezran looked up from Callum as he began to stir, while every dragon, true impartial blood, hissed at Viren venomously. "What's going on?" Callum muttered groggily as he shifted to his elbows. "Your Highness." They all looked up and felt their hearts leap into their throats as the voice of the Keeper answered from above them. "I do apologize for the induced sleep. I suspected you did not want to relive your life as you had to endure." Callum grunted in thanks as Rayla and Ezran helped him rise. The white-haired dragon nodded slightly. "I suspect you have many questions for me. I will answer the best I can per the law of the Keepers." As soon as she was certain Callum was steady, Rayla asked the first question. "What is the law of Keepers?" The Keeper smiled as he ran a hand through his mane of hair, revealing onyx-colored horns closely set upon his head. "To summarize it, the law prohibits the current Keeper of Stories to interact with those they are tasked to watch, with the exception of certain acts, such as this, for instance." He waved a hand across the entirety of the throne room. "The outcome here affects not only the young dragon prince, but all in this chamber. Elves, humans, dragons, and variants. It affects all of Zadia. With such a magnitude of importance, I'd be a fool not to offer my guidance." Rayla nodded slowly as she thought about the information. "So, you knew all along what happened to Callum, but couldn't act because no one else knew of it?" He nodded once. "Exactly. However, now that all are gathered here, I may pass on history and what is yet to come." After a moment of silence, it was Ezran who spoke up next. "Is Soren really going to die?" Callum quickly jerked his gaze to Ezran, then to Soren, then to Rayla, then to his mother, and finally the Keeper. Wait, what? Soren?" The Keeper nodded once as he spoke to Ezran. "Yes, young king. In 3 days' time, Soren of the Crown Guard will die by the words of his father and by the hands of his sister, and there will be nothing Viren, you, or your brother can do to save him." Silence filled the air as the group froze, unable to speak. There were a few halted steps behind the Keeper before the softest voice Ezra had ever heard spoke up. "Please, no." When the Keeper turned, Ezra expected to see Claudia, but instead he saw Pariah standing there, looking pale. The dragoness stared into the Keeper's stoic face and felt her knees buckle and surrendered to the crushing weight in both her heart and her mind. "Please, Keeper, no," she pleaded at his feet. "Tell me it's not true." He knelt down to her and softly set a hand upon her shoulder. "I am sorry, son-child, but his death is the final act in the times of great sorrow." This time Callum spoke up. "Times of great sorrow? What do you mean?" The Keeper kept his hand on Pariah's shoulder as he turned to the prince. "Every age has endured times of great sorrow before heralding an age of peace. The signs that this time is ending are all around you." Callum frowned and looked at his companions, who only shrugged and replied. The Keeper looked over the group, seeing their confusion. "The loss of the Dragon King was the tragedy for the very beginning." Ziva stiffened, but kept her eyes fixed on the Keeper as he continued. "Next were your years of imprisonment, followed by the death of your claimed brother's father, the second king. Then the one you hold most dear was exiled from the only home she ever knew. As painful as this will sound, all of those events were necessary. The deaths of the two kings represent the ending of the old ways of thinking for both sides. The imprisonment survived showed you the depth of wickedness, hate, and unnatural forces, yet upon being freed, you discovered the counter to it all: righteousness, love, and the natural beauty all around you. Callum gripped Rayla's hand tighter. And Rayla's banishment? The keeper sighed and seemed reluctant for a moment before speaking. A truly painful piece, but necessary. Standing true for the more righteous act, if she had gone ahead and completed her mission, then the times of great sorrow would have continued. He turned to Rayla and smiled directly at her. But you didn't. You listened when others would have struck, and you found another way to achieve your goal through mercy. That was the ultimate victory. You continued to stand true in what you believe, and you did not follow what others wanted of you. Once more there was silence, no one able to break it until Soren walked up slowly to the keeper. He looked down as he held Pariah's other shoulder. So, why do I need to die for all these warring times to end? The keeper looked up at him. Because of who you are inside. A representative of what the human race can be at its finest. A race of honor. But you also represent the darkness and evil of your father. In your death, you will become the idol of others who will survive to be, and the balance will calm the agony of the Dragon Queen. I am sorry, but it is the only way. The guard closed his eyes for a moment, then took a deep breath. If it needs to happen to bring peace, then I accept. Still kneeling on the ground, Pariah turned sharply to look at him behind her, mouth agape in shock as the others matched her expression. The keeper let his hand slide from Pariah and, with a sad smile, set it upon the crown guard's shoulder. This is why your death is the final act of the times of great sorrow, because you are a good man, Soren. Pariah was trembling slightly, but then found her feet and ran from the room. As she ran past him, Soren gasped, Pariah, wait! She ignored him and continued to run until she was gone from the throne room, throwing the doors open in her desperate need to escape. The guard turned to Ezran, who just smiled reassuringly. Go, she needs you more than me. He nodded once in thanks before racing after her down the hall. As he passed, his father glared. Useless traitor, he hissed. Soren stopped at the doorway for a heartbeat before shaking his head, not even bothering to turn around and timing after the dragoness. The queen, finally tired of watching of the wretched being before her, turned and backhanded him across the face. All were shocked by the act of the usually calm and kind Dragon Queen, but no one really opposed it. She walked back to her son and held his hand, telling him it would be okay. There were a few secret cheers from the elves as Viren shook his head and promptly spat out a tooth. The keeper, however, just stared blankly at him. We shall see then, will we not? Come 3 days, I will return to you as you look upon your only son's corpse. I will repeat to you these words. It is all your fault. And with that, the shadowy keeper was gone.